remember the exact moment it all fell apart. My name's Anna. I'm 38, and honestly, I should have known better. I was sitting in that sticky booth at the grind, chatting with Sarah about her new diet, when I said the one thing I shouldn't have. The chipped paint on the window frame, that awful, faded shade of yellow that always made the place feel perpetually dingy and depressing, was peeling away in thin, papery strips, like the fragile skin of a sunburn, a constant reminder of the shabbiness of this place, this small town, this life I'd somehow found myself trapped in, a life that felt increasingly suffocating with each passing day. Sarah, bless her heart, was going on, yet again, about the calorie-counting app she'd downloaded, something about macros and intermittent fasting and all the other buzzwords that I could never seem to keep track of, a language that felt entirely foreign to me, a world of meticulous self-control and restrictive practices that I couldn't even begin to understand, and honestly, didn't care to. I tried to listen, I really did, but my mind, like a restless and disobedient child, kept drifting back to Mark, to the way his overly enthusiastic laugh, which had once been so endearing, so full of life, had started to grate on my nerves, a sound that had once made my heart swell with affection now making my teeth clench in irritation, like a constant, irritating hum. A persistent reminder of everything that was wrong, of all the ways that he had become, over time, something other than the man I had married, of all the ways that our once-perfect life had slowly, but surely, begun to crumble around us. It was like I was listening to a broken record, a song that I had heard so many times that it had become meaningless. Devoid of all the emotion that it had once possessed, only now, it was a sound that I couldn't escape, that followed me everywhere I went, that was constantly replaying in my head like a twisted form of torture, a constant reminder of all the things that I hated about him, about our lives, about myself. He'd become this caricature of himself, this overly cheerful, slightly clumsy man who seemed to exist in a perpetual state of oblivious joy, as if he was somehow immune to all the pain and misery that I was experiencing. And I felt like a prisoner trapped in a never-ending comedy sketch, one that had somehow ceased to be funny a long time ago, a sitcom of our lives that had slowly, but surely, become nothing more than a parody of the love that we had once shared, a constant, painful reminder of how far we had drifted from the path that we had once set out upon. It's like I was constantly cataloging his flaws, each imperfection filed away in the mental notebook of my resentment, obsessing over the small things that had begun to irritate me, magnifying them until they became almost unbearable, until they consumed me entirely, as if I was somehow determined to find fault in every aspect of his being. The way he'd clear his throat, a strange, guttural sound that seemed to echo in every room, the way he'd misplace his reading glasses, always asking me where they were as if I was some kind of keeper of all things lost, the way he'd leave his socks crumpled on the floor, a trail of his existence scattered throughout the house like breadcrumbs leading back to him, to the chaos that he seemed to carry with him wherever he went. All of those small, seemingly insignificant things had somehow become the symbols of all that was wrong with our relationship, with our lives, with myself. I should have just kept quiet, should have nodded along politely and pretended to care about Sarah's latest diet obsession, should have let the moment pass, should have allowed the familiar comfort of our routine to simply wash over me. As it had done so many times before, should have held my tongue and kept the bitterness that was festering inside to myself, should have prevented myself from unleashing the monster that was waiting to break free. But I didn't. I never do. I'm like a moth drawn to a flame, always pulled towards the thing that I know will burn me, towards the words that I know I shouldn't say, drawn to the chaos like an addict is drawn to a fix or a child to a forbidden toy, forever destined to make the same mistakes, to sabotage my own happiness, to destroy everything that I claim to love. I can still feel the cold, slightly greasy texture of that chipped mug in my hand, the way the lukewarm coffee tasted like ash, acrid and bitter, the way the air in that cafe always felt thick with unspoken resentments, the shared frustrations of the patrons, all of us trapped in the mundane cycle of our daily lives, all of us longing for something more, all of us trying to escape the monotony of our own existence. a constant reminder that I was not alone in my misery, that I was not the only one who was struggling, that I was not the only one who was desperately trying to find a way out of the prison that I had built for myself. It's funny, isn't it? That a place that once felt so familiar, so comfortable, like a second home, could become the scene of such a devastating explosion. A place where I shattered everything with a single, careless sentence, where I destroyed the one thing that I claimed to care about, the one thing that had once given meaning to my life, a place that was now forever tainted by the ugliness of my own words, a constant reminder of the moment that I had finally allowed the darkness to take control. I remember watching the way Sarah was picking at the corner of her dry toast, a tiny, methodical action that, in that moment, seemed to encapsulate all my own simmering frustrations, a small action that felt like a challenge to my own inability to simply be happy, to simply be content, to simply appreciate the things that I had been so fortunate to have. A desperate attempt to provoke a reaction from a world that seemed to be moving on without me. And as I watched her, I felt this overwhelming urge to say it, like the words were boiling up from the depths of me, a toxic brew that was desperately trying to escape, a need to spill out everything that was eating me up from the inside out, a desperate plea to release the monster that I had been holding captive, a desire to finally confront the truth of my own unhappiness. And so I did. I know it sounds awful, to be so judgmental of him, to be so critical of the man that I once claimed to love, to dissect him and analyze him, to pick apart all of his flaws as if he was some kind of specimen that I was dissecting on a cold, metal table, to tear him apart with my words, as if I had a right to inflict pain upon him. I'm not normally like this, I swear. Or at least that's what I keep telling myself, that I am not this person, this woman who is so consumed by negativity, this monster that seems to be fueled by bitterness and resentment, that I am somehow capable of so much cruelty. But he's been so infuriating lately, like he's deliberately trying to push me to my breaking point, like he's purposefully trying to provoke a reaction from me, as if he is secretly testing the limits of my patience, as if he is deliberately trying to drive me insane. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just looking for a reason to complain, a scapegoat to blame for all the things that I feel are wrong with my own life, my own choices, all the mistakes that I have made, all the opportunities that I have squandered, all the dreams that I have let die, all the happiness that I have destroyed. Maybe the problem lies within me and not within him. But I can't help it. It just comes out, like some kind of toxic spill, poisoning everything in its path, polluting the space between us, and creating a suffocating atmosphere that has become our new reality, as if I have deliberately set out to make our lives as miserable as possible, as if I am somehow destined to destroy everything that I touch. It's like a switch has flipped, and suddenly, all I can see are his flaws, his imperfections, the irritating habits that used to be so endearing, now like nails on a chalkboard, scraping away at my sanity, driving me to the very edge of madness, a constant reminder of all the ways that he falls short, of all the ways that he disappoints me, of all the ways that he fails to be the man that I want him to be. He tells the same stories over and over, the same unfunny jokes that have long since lost their charm, the same tedious anecdotes about his day at work, at that dull, soulless office that he seems so content with, that seems to drain every ounce of joy from his existence, a life that seems so utterly and completely devoid of any kind of meaning. It's like he's living in some kind of loop, stuck in this predictable routine that feels like my own personal prison, and I feel trapped with him, bound to a life that I no longer recognize, a life that seems to be suffocating me, a life that is slowly but surely destroying everything that I once valued, a life that has become nothing more than a constant reminder of all that I have lost. And I know that's not fair, that he's just being Mark, the man I fell in love with, or at least, the man that I thought he was, the man that I projected my own dreams and desires onto, the man that I tried to mold into my own perfect image of happiness, the man that I tried to change into something that he was never meant to be. But the truth is, he's changed, or maybe it's me who has changed. Maybe I'm now seeing things through a distorted lens, my own bitterness and resentment clouding my vision, turning everything I once loved into something I now despise. as if I have deliberately poisoned my own heart, as if I have chosen to see him as nothing more than a disappointment. He's become this caricature of himself, this overly enthusiastic, slightly clumsy man who seems so oblivious to the world around him, a person who is so different from the man that I thought I was marrying, a person that I feel no connection to, a person that I feel only contempt for, a man that I feel trapped with, a man that I have made into my own personal prison. It's like I'm constantly picking at a scab, and instead of letting it heal, I keep reopening it, picking at the same sore spot, the same imperfections, until it's raw and bleeding and festering, until the wound becomes infected and the pain becomes unbearable, as if I am somehow determined to ensure that my suffering is never-ending. He leaves his shoes in the middle of the living room. Like he is a teenager who still doesn't understand basic household etiquette, he hums loudly when he's reading, a tuneless drone that grates on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. He forgets to put the lid back on the toothpaste, another small, seemingly insignificant action that sets my teeth on edge, as if he is deliberately trying to annoy me, to drive me crazy. As if he is secretly trying to push me to the very edge of my sanity, as if he is somehow responsible for my own descent into madness. Small things, insignificant things, but they've become like the soundtrack to my own personal hell, a chorus of tiny irritations that are always present, always reminding me of all the ways that he falls short, all the ways that he disappoints me, all the ways that he fails to live up to the man that I have created in my head, as if he was somehow designed to be the source of my suffering. And the worst part is, I know I sound awful, like some kind of bitter, resentful shrew, a woman who has become so jaded and cynical, so consumed by negativity, that she is no longer capable of seeing any good in the world, or at least in her own marriage, a person who is so completely and utterly lost in the darkness that she is no longer able to see the light. I hate that I've become this person, this woman who is always looking for the worst in him, this person that I never intended to be, this monster that seems to have no ability to control her tongue, that seems to be driven by the darkness that lives inside her, that seems to be destined to destroy everything that she touches. But I can't seem to stop myself, and I wonder if part of me doesn't even want to, if I have become so addicted to the chaos, so addicted to the negativity, so addicted to the feeling of being wronged, that I am now completely incapable of seeing anything other than the worst, as if I have deliberately poisoned my own soul, as if I am somehow destined to destroy myself. It's like I need to justify my feelings, to prove that he's the problem, not me, to convince myself that I'm not just a terrible, awful person, so caught up in my own pain that I can no longer see the suffering of others, that I am not somehow responsible for the misery that I have created. I hate that I'm so obsessed, so consumed by my own resentment, so unable to let go of the small irritations, so tethered to the negativity, as if I am determined to turn my own life into a miserable existence, to wallow in my self-pity, to play the victim, to make myself into the martyr of my own self-created tragedy, as if I have somehow convinced myself that suffering is the only thing that I deserve. Maybe I need him to be the bad guy, so I can be the innocent victim. Maybe that's the only way I know how to exist within this relationship. Maybe I've become so comfortable with self-pity that I no longer recognize my own agency, my own ability to make different choices. Maybe I've become so used to the darkness that I no longer know how to find the light, that I am now lost in the shadows of my own making. And I fear that I will never be able to find my way back to the light. And that thought makes me feel even worse, like a hypocrite, like a terrible, selfish person who is so blinded by her own pain that she is unwilling to accept any responsibility for her own choices, her own actions, her own words, that I am more than capable of causing as much pain as I claim to suffer. That I am no better than the man I despise, that I am destined to repeat the same mistakes, that I am forever trapped in the cycle of my own self-destruction. But even with that knowledge, even with the growing sense of self-awareness, I still can't stop myself. I am like a moth drawn to the flame, powerless to resist my own destruction, forever trapped in the cycle of my own self-pity, forever doomed to repeat the mistakes of my past. And then I said it, the words tumbling out before I could stop myself, like a dam had finally burst, releasing the torrent of bitterness that had been building up inside, spilling out into the world like poison, destroying everything in its path, leaving nothing but a trail of devastation in its wake. God, he's just so embarrassing to be around lately, I said, and Sarah's face dropped, like she had just witnessed some terrible crime, like I had just confessed to a dark secret, a hidden truth that should have remained buried in the shadows, a glimpse into the darkness that had been slowly consuming me, a testament to the cruelty that had taken root within my heart. In that moment, I felt a chill, a sudden drop in temperature, as if I'd just opened a door to something terrible, something that I wouldn't be able to take back, something that would forever alter the course of my life and the lives of those around me, a sense of foreboding that sent a shiver down my spine, a terrifying premonition of the destruction that I had just unleashed. It was a throwaway comment, a casual remark delivered with a snort of laughter, a pathetic attempt to minimize the cruelty, to pretend that it was nothing more than a light-hearted joke. But the way it hung in the air, the way Sarah's smile faded, the way she looked at me, it felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that knocked the wind out of me, leaving me breathless and shaken. A confirmation of the horror that I had just unleashed upon the man that I claimed to love. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room, and we were both left gasping for breath, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what I had just done, the devastation that I had just unleashed, the profound and irreparable damage that I had inflicted with those few careless words, as if I had spoken a curse that had somehow condemned us both. Sarah looked at me with this strange expression, a mixture of shock and pity, like she was looking at a stranger, like she didn't recognize me, and I instantly knew I'd crossed a line, ventured into a territory that I wouldn't be able to retreat from, a place where the consequences of my actions would finally catch up to me, a place where I was no longer able to hide from the truth of who I was. The cruel and bitter woman that I had become, the monster that I had so readily embraced. I tried to play it off, laughing nervously, but the sound felt hollow, a pathetic attempt to minimize the damage I had caused, a desperate plea to pretend that nothing had changed, a feeble attempt to erase the words that had already been spoken. A desperate attempt to claw back the control that I had just carelessly thrown away, a foolish hope that I could somehow undo the damage that I had so carelessly inflicted. It was like I could hear the words echoing, bouncing off the walls of the cafe, the low hum of conversation and the clatter of coffee cups, and the more I tried to take them back, to retract the damage I had inflicted, the more they seemed to amplify, resonating with a force that I couldn't control, becoming louder and more accusatory with each passing second, like a damning indictment of my own character, a voice that was calling me out for the cruelty and the bitterness that I had so readily embraced, a condemnation of the darkness that had taken root within my soul. What was I thinking? What possessed me to say something so callous, so cruel, so utterly unnecessary, so completely and utterly devoid of any kindness or compassion, so deliberately designed to inflict pain upon the man that I claimed to love, so maliciously crafted to undermine him and belittle him? It was a stupid, thoughtless comment, but it was more than that, so much more than that. It was a glimpse into the darkness that had been growing inside me, a reflection of all the bitterness and resentment that had been festering beneath the surface, the toxic stew of negativity that I had been quietly cultivating, the poisonous lies that I had been feeding myself for so long, the twisted logic that I had used to justify my own cruelty. A terrifying realization of the woman that I had become. It was like I had finally given voice to all the cruel, ugly things that had been swirling around in my head, the dark, twisted thoughts that I had tried so hard to ignore, finally coming out into the light, finally becoming real, finally taking on a life of their own, like a monster that had been unleashed, and was now starting to tear me apart from the inside out, a creature that I had so carelessly brought into the world. And even now, looking back at that moment, I still struggle to see why it was so bad. I still try to justify myself, still try to convince myself that I was just speaking my truth, that I was just expressing my honest feelings, that I was just acknowledging the reality of my own suffering, as if my pain somehow gave me the right to inflict pain upon others, as if my own misery was somehow a justification for my cruelty, as if I was somehow deserving of the suffering that I was causing, as if I was anything other than the monster that I had become. I reached for my coffee, my hand trembling slightly. But it tasted like ash, a constant reminder of the ugliness that had just spilled from my mouth, a flavor that I knew would stay with me forever, a taste that would forever taint the memories of that day, a reminder of the moment that I had finally allowed the darkness to take control, the moment that I had finally destroyed everything that I had ever cared about. He didn't say a word. Just a quick glance, that same look of quiet disappointment that had become so familiar, a look that seemed to weigh him down, to drain every ounce of light from his eyes, a look that was filled with a quiet sadness and a profound sense of betrayal, and went back to his book, that same book he seemed to be perpetually reading, but never turning the page, a symbol of his detachment, of his withdrawal, of the slow and insidious erosion of our shared existence, as if he was trying to escape into a different world, a world that was free from all the pain and misery that I had brought into his life. Then he started sleeping on the sofa, claiming I moved too much, but it was just another way to shut me out, another deliberate attempt to create even more space between us. To build this invisible wall that I couldn't seem to break down, a tangible manifestation of the emotional chasm that was growing wider with each passing day, a deliberate act of separation that was designed to make me feel as though I was no longer a part of his life. The way he avoided me, the way he wouldn't look me in the eye, the way he seemed to exist in this strange, silent world of his own making, it was like I had become invisible, like I was nothing more than a ghost haunting the same space, a forgotten memory that he was trying to erase, an unwelcome presence that he wanted to disappear, a constant reminder of all the pain that I had caused, all the damage that I had inflicted, all the cruel things that I had said, a living embodiment of his own suffering. A testament to the cruelty that had taken root within my heart. Every little thing he did, every little sound he made, became a source of irritation, a constant reminder of the distance that had grown between us, a tangible manifestation of the growing gulf that separated us, a constant, nagging reminder of all the ways that he failed to live up to the man that I wanted him to be, of all the ways that he had become such a disappointment to me. He would come home from work, that same mundane job that he seemed to find so fulfilling, that soulless existence that seemed to be sucking the very life out of him, and immediately retreat to the sofa, burying himself in his book, creating this invisible wall of silence that I couldn't seem to break through, refusing to acknowledge my existence, pretending that I was not even there. As if I had simply ceased to exist, a ghost that he was trying to ignore, a shadow that he was desperately trying to outrun, a reminder of all the pain and misery that I had brought into his life. It was like he was deliberately trying to ignore me, like I was nothing more than an unwelcome guest in his own home, an intruder who had overstayed her welcome, a reminder of everything he had lost. Or perhaps, a reminder of the person he had always known me to be, a person that he had finally seen for who I really was, a bitter, cruel, and self-absorbed woman who was incapable of love or empathy, a monster that had finally broken free from the prison of her own mind, and was now wreaking havoc on everything that she touched. And the more he withdrew, the more furious I became. Fueled by a desperate need for his attention, a desperate need to provoke a reaction, a desperate need to find a way to make him hurt as much as I was hurting, as if inflicting pain upon him could somehow lessen my own suffering. A twisted desire to feel something, even if that something was negative, as if by making him feel the same despair that I was experiencing, I could somehow validate the pain that I had brought upon myself. It was like I was being punished for my words, forced to endure the silent treatment, to live in this atmosphere of cold detachment, this emotional wasteland that was once our home, a prison of my own making, a tangible manifestation of the loneliness and despair that I had so readily embraced. But even then, I still thought I was in the right, still managed to justify my actions in the distorted logic of my self-pitying narrative, still desperately clung to the belief that I was the innocent victim, that I was the one who had been wronged, that I was the only one who was suffering. He was being oversensitive, overreacting to a simple comment, making it into something that it wasn't, turning a molehill into a mountain, and using my words as a weapon against me, as if he was deliberately trying to hurt me, as if his pain was somehow designed to undermine my own suffering, as if he was trying to make me feel guilty for speaking my truth. I hadn't meant to be cruel, not really. I was just speaking my truth, just expressing my feelings, and if he couldn't handle that, then that was his problem, not mine. I shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. I shouldn't have to censor my feelings. I shouldn't have to pretend to be something that I'm not, as if my truth was somehow more important than his feelings, as if my pain somehow gave me the right to inflict pain upon him. I found myself picking fights over the smallest things, the way he loaded the dishwasher, the unevenly placed plates and the random arrangement of cutlery, the TV shows he chose to watch, the boring documentaries about obscure historical events, the things that I would usually just laugh at and ignore, had now become intolerable, the signs of the growing chasm between us. As if every little thing he did was a deliberate act of rebellion, an intentional attempt to provoke me, to push me to the very edge. It was like I was actively trying to provoke him, desperate for a reaction, desperate for a fight, anything that would break through this suffocating wall of silence, anything that would prove that I wasn't the only one who was suffering. Anything that would give me some sense of validation, some sense that I wasn't the only one who was to blame for this mess, as if I was desperately trying to drag him down into the darkness with me. And he just wouldn't give it to me. He refused to engage, he refused to be provoked, he refused to become the villain that I so desperately needed him to be. He was refusing to participate in my own self-created drama, denying me the satisfaction of a fight, denying me the validation that I so desperately craved. He wouldn't yell, he wouldn't scream, he wouldn't even raise his voice. He just looked at me with those sad, gentle eyes, those eyes that seemed to hold so much disappointment and sorrow, and then he'd walk away, leaving me alone with my anger, my resentment, my self-pity, and my growing despair, a constant reminder of the fact that I was the one who was destroying everything, that I was the one who was responsible for all the pain and misery. It was passive-aggressive, I told myself, a deliberate act of emotional manipulation, an insidious attempt to make me question my own sanity, a cruel and calculated way to undermine me, to make me feel as though I was somehow responsible for all of this. He was deliberately pushing me away, trying to make me feel bad, using the silent treatment as a weapon, trying to make me the bad guy, to make me feel like I was responsible for all of this, as if I was the one who was somehow at fault for his unhappiness, as if he was somehow trying to trick me into playing the villain in my own twisted story. I was the victim here, not him, and I wouldn't let him forget it. I would continue to cling to my righteous anger, no matter how much pain it caused, no matter how much damage it did to the things that I once claimed to care about, as if I was somehow destined to be the cause of my own destruction, as if I had no other choice than to continue down the path that I had so carelessly chosen. But even as I told myself this, as I desperately clung to my distorted perception of reality, I couldn't help the feeling of unease, the small voice in the back of my head that kept whispering, "Are you sure? Are you really sure that you're the one in the right? Are you sure that you're not just projecting your own flaws, your own insecurities, onto him? Are you sure that you are not, in fact, the very monster that you claim to despise?" I hated that voice. I wanted it to shut up, to disappear, to stop undermining my certainty, to stop threatening the fragile foundation of my own self-pity, to stop revealing the truth of the monster that I had become. I wanted to be the victim. I wanted to be the injured party. I wanted to be the one who was wronged, and I would do anything, say anything, to make that my reality, even if it meant destroying everything that I had ever cared about, even if it meant losing myself completely. It's like he's deliberately trying to make me angry, doing the things he knows annoy me, as if he is actively seeking to provoke me, to push me to my limits, to force me into a reaction, as if he is secretly trying to destroy me from the inside out, as if he is somehow determined to make me feel as miserable as he is. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it feels. That is the story that I tell myself, the narrative that I cling to, the warped version of reality that I have created in my own head, a desperate attempt to make sense of the chaos that I had unleashed upon my own existence. And then I wonder, is it me? Am I the one making it worse? Am I the one who is responsible for all of this? No, it's him. It has to be him, because if it wasn't him, then what would that say about me? What would that say about the monster that I have become? What would that say about the woman that I had destroyed? It's like he's taken my comment, this one stupid comment, this one careless remark that slipped out before I could stop it, and blown it completely out of proportion, turning it into this epic drama. This huge, earth-shattering event that has forever changed the course of our relationship. As if my words have somehow managed to rewrite our entire history. As if I am somehow responsible for the way that he has chosen to react, for the way that he has allowed my words to define the entire course of our shared existence. And I hate him for it. Hate him for his inability to just let it go, to see it for what it was. A simple, insignificant sentence, rather than the declaration of war that he has made it into, as if I am somehow to blame for his unwillingness to forgive, for his inability to move on from the pain that I had inflicted. I hate that he has this power over me. This ability to make me feel like I'm the one who's done something wrong, to turn the tables on me, to make me the villain in the story of our lives, to make me the perpetrator when I am, in fact, the victim, as if I have somehow been tricked into playing the role of the antagonist in my own twisted narrative, as if I am somehow responsible for my own suffering. I hate that he can just withdraw, shut me out completely, and make me feel like I'm nothing, like I'm invisible, like I have no right to feel any kind of pain or any kind of emotion, as if my feelings are completely invalid, as if my suffering is not as significant as his, as if I have no right to express my pain, no right to demand his compassion. I know I said something stupid, something thoughtless, something that perhaps I shouldn't have said, but it wasn't that bad, not really, not deserving of this level of resentment and detachment, not deserving of the complete and utter destruction of everything that we had, as if my words were somehow worthy of such a catastrophic response. I didn't mean to hurt him, not intentionally, at least. I didn't want to make him feel small or unimportant. I just wanted him to see me, to see that I was also hurting, to see that I was also struggling, to stop seeing me as the villain, to acknowledge that my pain was just as valid as his, that I was also worthy of his compassion, that I deserved to be treated with respect. And yet, here we are. In this state of silent war, living in the aftermath of my words, where every little interaction is loaded with tension, where every glance feels like a weapon, where every shared moment is a reminder of the growing chasm between us, where every shared breath seems to be tainted by the bitterness and resentment that has become our new reality. Where every second that I spend in his presence is a reminder of the monster that I have become. He'll do things, small things, like leaving his socks on the floor, like not rinsing his coffee cup, like leaving the toilet seat up, and it's like he's doing it on purpose, deliberately trying to provoke me, deliberately trying to make me angry, pushing me closer and closer to the edge of my sanity. As if he is somehow trying to make me question my own grip on reality, as if he is somehow trying to drive me completely insane. And the worst part is, it works every single time. Every time he does something that annoys me, I feel this surge of anger, this desperate need to retaliate, to hurt him the same way he's hurting me, as if by inflicting pain upon him, I can somehow lessen the pain that I feel within myself, as if by making him suffer, I can somehow make myself feel whole again, as if I am somehow entitled to project my own suffering onto those around me. It's like we're locked in this toxic dance, this endless cycle of blame and resentment, this constant push and pull that has become our new reality, and I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to break free from the shackles of my own anger. I don't know how to escape the self-made prison that I have created, as if I am destined to forever repeat the mistakes of my past. And then, sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, listening to his quiet breathing from the sofa, that small voice creeps in, the one that whispers, "Maybe you're being too harsh. Maybe you're being unfair. Maybe you're the one who's in the wrong. Maybe you're seeing things the wrong way. Maybe you're just projecting your own insecurities and fears onto him. Maybe you're the one who's destroying everything. Maybe you are not the victim you claim to be. Maybe you are, in fact, the very villain that you despise. Maybe I am, in fact, the monster of my own creation." And that voice makes me even angrier, because I don't want to be wrong. I need to be the victim. I need to believe that I'm the one who's been wronged, because if I'm not, then what does that say about me? What does that mean about the life I've created? What does that mean about the monster that I have become? And the more I try to justify myself, the more I begin to doubt myself, the more I begin to question my own version of events, the more I feel like I am starting to lose control of everything, the more I realize that I am slowly, but surely, destroying myself, that I am the architect of my own demise. It's like I'm caught in this endless loop, this constant battle between my head and my heart, between the righteous anger that fuels me and the small, flickering spark of guilt that threatens to consume me. A war within myself that has left me feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely and utterly alone, lost in the darkness of my own creation, a prisoner in the fortress of my own self-pity. I just want it to stop. I want it to go back to how it was before I said that stupid thing, before I let all this resentment fester, before I destroyed everything that we had, before I turned into this person that I now despise, before I allowed the monster to take control of my life, before I became the creature that haunts my nightmares. But deep down, I know that's impossible, and that's what scares me the most, the terrifying knowledge that I'm now facing a future that I have created myself. A future where I am not sure that I can ever escape my past mistakes. A future where I am forever haunted by the ghost of my own choices, destined to live with the consequences of my own actions. I hate that he won't fight back. That he just accepts all my anger like it's normal, like it's something that he deserves, like I have a right to unleash my fury upon him without any consequences, as if I am the judge and jury of our relationship, as if my feelings are somehow more valid than his, as if my pain somehow gives me the right to inflict pain upon those around me, as if I am somehow entitled to his suffering. I wish he would shout, argue, do something, anything to make me feel like I'm not screaming into a void, that I am not just talking to myself, that my feelings matter, that my pain is real, that I am not just a figment of my own warped imagination, that my existence somehow has meaning beyond the walls of this self-created prison. Maybe that's the point. Maybe he's doing this deliberately. Maybe he's trying to make me feel crazy. Maybe he's trying to make me question my own sanity. Maybe he's just letting me destroy myself and watching with a quiet, almost detached curiosity as I unravel before his eyes, as if he is simply observing the self-destruction of a creature that he can no longer understand, a woman that he has finally given up on. The more he withdraws, the more desperate I become. The more desperate I become, the more I lash out. I am caught in a cycle where his silence becomes my tormentor, pushing me further and further into the darkness, a never-ending descent into madness that I seem powerless to resist. It's like I'm trying to force a reaction out of him, to provoke some kind of response, even if it's a negative one. Even if it's a reaction that will leave me feeling even worse. A twisted desire for a fight that will prove that I am still alive, that I am still capable of feeling something, even if that something is nothing more than the sharp sting of anger, as if that is somehow preferable to the slow and insidious erosion of my own soul. I'll pick fights over the smallest things. The way he loads the dishwasher, the music he chooses to listen to, even the way he breathes, that slow, almost imperceptible sound that has become like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Anything that will disrupt the suffocating silence that has become the soundtrack to our lives. Anything to break the monotony of our shared misery. To feel something, anything. Even if it is just the pain of another fight. As if that is somehow preferable to the dull ache of the loneliness that has become my constant companion. I'll make snide comments. I'll roll my eyes. I'll find any excuse to express my anger, my frustration, my resentment, anything to show him how much he is hurting me, to make him acknowledge the pain that he has inflicted upon me, even if it's a pain that I have myself created, as if I can somehow make him feel responsible for my own self-inflicted suffering. And he just absorbs it all, like a sponge, never retaliating, never defending himself, never even acknowledging the pain that I'm inflicting, never offering any kind of explanation, never providing me with any sense of closure, as if I am somehow invisible to him, as if my pain has no effect on him, as if I have somehow become completely irrelevant to his existence. And that's what makes me so angry, the way he just takes it, the way he refuses to engage, the The way he lets me tear him apart without so much as a whimper, like I have some kind of right to treat him this way, like my feelings are more important than his, like my pain is greater than the pain that he is clearly experiencing, as if I am somehow entitled to his suffering, as if I have somehow earned the right to be cruel. And sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, unable to sleep, listening to his quiet breathing from the sofa, that small voice creeps in, the one that whispers, "What if you're the one who's wrong? What if you're the one who's driving him away? What if you're the one who's destroying everything? What if you're the monster in this story, not the innocent victim that you have so carefully crafted in your own mind?" And that voice makes me feel sick with shame, with self-loathing, with this deep, gnawing fear that I'm losing control, not only of him but of myself, that I am watching myself unravel, watching as the person I once was fades into nothingness, replaced by this bitter, angry woman that I no longer recognize, a creature fueled by darkness and lost in the shadows of her own creation. And I try to push it away, to silence it with more anger, more bitterness, more justification for my behavior, but it never truly goes away. It is always there, lurking in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of my own flaws, my own failures, a shadow that I cannot seem to outrun, a burden that I am forced to carry with me for the rest of my days. As if I am somehow destined to suffer for the mistakes that I have made. It's like I'm trapped in this never-ending nightmare, where I am both the victim and the perpetrator, where I am both the one who is hurting and the one who is causing the pain, a twisted cycle that seems to be completely beyond my control, a spiral that is pulling me deeper and deeper into the darkness, a prison of my own making that I am now destined to inhabit forever. And the more I try to suppress it, the more it seems to grow, until it's like a monster that's threatening to swallow me whole, and I am completely powerless to stop it, a beast that has finally taken control of my life and is now leading me down the path of self-destruction, a creature that is intent on destroying everything that I have ever held dear. And I know, deep down, that I'm spiraling, that I'm losing myself in this mess of my own making, that I am heading down a path of self-destruction that I am unable to deviate from, that I am slowly but surely destroying everything that I have ever cared about, that I am no longer the person that I once was, but a monster that I can no longer control. I can feel my own edges fraying, my own sense of self crumbling, and I'm terrified, not just of losing him, but of losing myself, of becoming the very thing that I despise, of becoming the monster that has haunted my nightmares for so long, of becoming the woman that I have always tried to avoid. I'm terrified of who I'm becoming, and I'm terrified that it's all my fault, that I am the architect of my own demise, that I am the one who is responsible for all the pain and misery that I am experiencing, that I have finally reached the point of no return. But even then, even with this growing sense of self-awareness, I still can't stop myself. It is like I am addicted to the chaos, addicted to the drama, addicted to the feeling of being wronged, because without it, without the comfort of my own self-pity, I don't know who I am anymore. I no longer recognize the person in the mirror. I have become a creature fueled by bitterness and anger, and I am not sure that I can ever change. Maybe one day, I will finally understand. Maybe one day, I will finally be able to forgive myself. But until then, I am left to wander in the darkness, forever haunted by the ghost of my own actions, forever destined to be the architect of my own misery. And the last thought that I'm left with, the image that is burned into my mind, is the image of Mark standing by the window, his heart broken, his soul wounded, the man that I had once loved, the man that I had so carelessly destroyed, and I am forever left to wonder, was I ever someone worth loving? And did he ever really see me for who I truly was? Or was I always the villain in my own life story, that I was in his? A creature fueled by her own self-pity and negativity, a monster that had finally consumed herself.